Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Webinars Now session. I'm Greg Stuckey, the Chief Research Officer at Insights Now, and today we are going to be talking about behavioral KPIs, specifically focusing on measuring human emotions and looking at how we can set up some KPIs around emotions. Today, we're going to be talking about some specific behavioral frameworks and going to ground you in those frameworks first, and then from those frameworks, understand how you can use those to build out some KPIs for your business and for specifically doing product research, claims research, and emotions-based research. All right, so I'm Greg Stuckey, again, the Chief Research Officer at Insights Now, who provide behavioral research solutions. And our goal is always to help you find better answers through behavioral research and improve your speed to and success in market with your new innovative products. As we go through today's session, please join in, chat with me anytime you want during the session. As we get to the end of the session here, I will use the question window and the chat window to help identify any questions that people may have and answer those questions at the end. All right, so let's get kicked off. Behavior research. Behavior research, we say behavior research is always based on frameworks. And frameworks are a tough thing. There's lots of frameworks out there. Lots of people have different types of frameworks. However, it's really important if you're doing research around emotions, around behavior, to have a framework of some sort that you're working on, not just working on measures or metrics specific to behavior or that you think are related to behavior. Because frameworks help you organize different pieces of information together. It helps you understand how to connect the dots between different pieces of information and a person's related behavior. And it also allows us to focus on the information which is most useful at predicting how we can motivate specific behaviors or identifying how we can motivate specific behaviors. So to have a framework is really, really important in your research. We're going to be talking about a number of different frameworks. I'm not going to go through all 5 of these, but I wanted to throw a few of the frameworks that Insights Now has distilled from lots of behavioral science work to try and make the great complexity of behavioral science and emotion science, to try and make it easy to use in product research, in innovation research and marketing. So the first one I want to talk about today are the different modes of thinking. So one of the things that is really important when you're doing behavior-based research is to understand how you're connecting with people. Now, most people are very familiar with System 1, which is implicit thinking. This is where your brain is reacting to perceptions around you faster than you can think through the why you're reacting the way you're reacting or to change your opinion or mind about something. That's called implicit thinking. It's very fast, automatic, it's very unconscious, it's happening super quickly. It's part of your everyday decisioning process. It's you reaching for your phone before you're even know it's going off, as an example. System 2 is very explicit. This is the slower thinking process. This is where you start to wonder why you're doing what you're doing and think through the process. This is also the mode that your brain is in when you're trying to make a decision about something. So if you're stuck between 2 options in a grocery store or trying to find something in your house, the explicit thinking process takes over, and it's effortful. It helps you make complex decisions. Now, System 3 is another mode of thinking, and this is perspective thinking. This is about thinking about the future, and this is anticipating a future response. And when we talk about creativity, this is the aspect of your brain that is what we call prospective. And some people put System 3 and System 2 all together because it is both of them are slow processes. However, system 3 thinking, we're pulling it out because it's uniquely valuable, especially when we're looking at measuring emotions and coming up with metrics around emotions. So we always want to make sure that we're breaking things apart in such a way that they help us make better decisions about our innovation. So we pull apart system 3 in perspective thinking, simply to look at that future forward, how you anticipate the future. Okay. The next one I want to talk about today is our emotions insights wheel. Emotions are treated as discrete. It's very possible to feel multiple different emotions all at the same time. Therefore, we like to look at them as discrete. And we also like to break them into 4 categories. There can be emotions, which are always projected, by the way, that are projected on something very functional, something very sensorial, something very social, something very psychological. So we can break the different types of emotions down and to what type of experience or projection they're going after. The other thing we can do is we can look at the difference between anticipation emotions, things about the future, and experience emotions. And understanding the difference between those helps us learn, if you will, how to disrupt people versus how to encourage an existing habit or behavior or routine. So it's important to understand, number one, that emotions are different from moods, which are different from attitudes. Emotions are very, very fast and fleeting. Moods are, and emotions are always projected on something. Moods are slow. They're not as fleeting, if you will, and they are also not projected on anything. You just feel bored for a long period of time, right? That sensation or feeling of sadness for an extended period of time is a mood, and it's often not projected on anything. However, if a specific item has bored you, then you can project that very fast, very fleeting emotion against something. That's emotion. The other one's a mood. Attitudes, these are projected, but they are very, very long term, right? They're not fleeting. They're very stayed, if you will, in our life. So attitudes are often what we have about brands, about products, about people, et cetera, so forth. And so understanding that if you're going to focus on emotions, you want to pick those fast fleeting items. And if you're going to focus on moods, you want to make sure that you set the stage so that you're focusing on something that's more extended. And if it's attitudes, again, something that's projected. So knowing how to put this all together, this framework then helps pull that information together. As we design research, you can design it around, do I need anticipation emotions here? Do I need experience emotions here? All right, so frameworks, again, help you organize information, help you think through how that information comes to life. The other thing that we like to talk through is our behavioral pyramid. Behavior pyramid is really looking at what are all of the influencers of behavioral responses. This diagram is a very simplified version of a much more complicated and much more deep scienced pyramid. But what it does show is that it is the different core layers. At the bottom are the things that don't change about people very quickly. The next layer up changes a little faster, next layer changes really quickly, and behavior is always in flux. And so one of the things that we want to do when we're creating an experimental design for a project is, and you're designing research so that you can get good behavioral KPIs, is you've got to make sure your foundation is solid. So you've got to make sure you're focusing on the right consumer qualities. And if you're going to compare the behavior against different groups of people, right? Or you have specific KPIs you want to hit. You've got to make sure that you're doing an apples to apples comparison. One of the ways to do that is to think through the behavior pyramid. Do I have the right consumer qualities, the things that don't change about people? Have I set the right context for this research? Have I primed people properly so that it's not a context effect I'm measuring, it's actually maybe a product effect I'm measuring, et cetera, so forth. So make sure the behavioral information is measuring the right information. Likewise, the activities that a person is doing. Have I controlled the activities or have I accounted for those activities in my experimental design? and what specific behavioral response then do I want to measure. So looking at behavioral responses, there's lots of different types of response measures that we can drop at the top. We can talk about emotions, we can talk about implicit, we can talk about just time to respond, rational decisions, purchase choices, trade-offs, metaphors. You can do eye tracking, you can do clickstream monitoring of people's behaviors. Lots and lots of different types of behavioral responses. All could be potentially very valuable in understanding or monitoring people's behavior, and could develop into a KPI that helps you predict market success. All right, so if you're taking a look at behavioral KPIs, what you want to be able to do is say, I have all these response measures. Which one of those or which suite of those are good at helping me make faster, more accurate decisions about what will happen, especially from an innovation standpoint, if I'm putting this product on the market or if I'm putting this message out in the marketplace. So you can break down any of those response measures into either summary statistics, statistical comparisons, or hurdle rates of some type, predictions or forecasts, or a meta-analysis based approach where you have to have integration of information. Okay. So behavioral KPIs, fairly fluid, and you have a lot of options there. You simply need to take the time for your particular situation to look at what will work. Today, we're going to be focusing on behavioral KPIs that are specific to emotions and how people react emotionally to products and product claims messaging. So we've got two case studies I'm going to take you through. The first one is going to start with ad claims. So this is a product claim that would be put on the product, and this was the goal of this claim would be to foster the belief that this product is going to work in the situation I need it to. So one of the ways that we can do this from an emotion standpoint is that we can identify which of the claims are going to be most relevant to people, as well as which claim could disrupt the market versus which claim could nudge existing behavior. And those things we can get at through an emotions score. So we're going to look at how this research would unfold. So the first step is building a priming activity. You want to use a storytelling-based approach, and this would be in an online survey environment for doing claims work, although you could do it in person if you want to have a full product experience as well. But if it's online, which is the quickest way to do claims work, you would start with a priming activity where you get people to tell the story of that specific context. Again, think that behavior pyramid framework. You're recruiting the right people, you're setting the context through a priming activity here, right? Then we're going to take them into an implicit, explicit test of relevance. We're going to identify which of the claims are relevant to people and which of the claims are less relevant. What we know is that claims that are relevant get noticed. Claims that are irrelevant do not get noticed. Your brain filters them out extremely quickly, and you don't even know they're on the package or don't even notice them in the material. So you want to have implicitly connected relevant claims. And then finally, we want to take them through anticipation emotions. Remember, claims are all about what could happen in the future. They're designed to get you to buy something. So we only need a small set of emotions here. We only need those to test those emotions that are anticipation emotions in our work. Okay. So now the value of really understanding the implicit work, and why would we use implicit-based measures in order to give ourselves KPIs to predict what might happen in the market? Well, it's because understanding the difference between an implicit response to a claim and an explicit response to a claim helps us understand what we're doing to people in the marketplace. If this product is the category leader and you are trying to encourage more of the same behavior that you've already got with this product, you want to create more uses, then you want to nudge people. You don't want to disrupt them, because as soon as you disrupt them, they're going to look around at other products available out there. So what you want to have is a claim that is implicit, fast and relevant to people, so it nudges their behavior. However, if you're bringing out a new product and you're trying to break into a marketplace where, like in this example with skin creams, is fairly fairly full of other products out on the market, you want something that's actually going to disrupt people. And so what you're going to want is a claim that has a much higher percentage of people who, when they see the claim, it slows them down, it disrupts them, okay, but is still relevant. So in this particular study here, notice we have several different claims. I'm showing a spattering of them, but the top two claims, the length of the bar overall is the percentage that of people who said that this claim was relevant to them. So it was a yes response. This is relevant, rather than a no response. This is irrelevant. So you see that claim A, the vast majority of people had a very fast implicit yes response to that particular claim, whereas claim B, which has pretty similar length of, right, it's 88% overall, had a much, much higher percentage of people who had an explicit response. So still very, very relevant, however, much more disruptive. So again, if you're doing research and you want a KPI based on relevance in this particular case, you can look at the difference between an implicit and an explicit response to identify which claim is more valuable for you. Again, in this case, new entry into the market, you want something really disruptive, that's the one we're going to go with, even though it has a slightly lower level of relevance. I'm going to disrupt more people, which will be good for my brand. Now, beyond that, I still want to make sure that these claims are connecting with people emotionally the correct way, because we're wanting to make sure it's creating the right anticipation for the future. And relevance and anticipation emotions tend to go hand in glove. And when you see disconnects, that's a problem. But when you see synergies, then you know you've got the full story. So to do this, we have people project their emotions onto an image. How does this claim make you feel? They pick an image from a curated set that forces them to talk in metaphors. There's nothing that is completely simple and rational. For instance, there's no pictures of skincare creams in this particular set of images that we would show them. And explain why the image is a good metaphor. That helps us get some nice qualitative understanding about how their emotions are. It helps us also in our marketing, gets good quotes for marketing purposes. And then specifically go through hope, fear, intrigue, and desire. Those 4 key emotions, which are all about projected. I hope I feel, in the future, I expect that this makes me fearful about the future, hopeful about the future, intrigued about how this product would make me feel, or is just something I just really want to have right now. Okay, so this anticipation emotion, so you combine this, the product and the priming that you've done with the claims around it, and you identify in, again, an implicit, explicit response fashion, whether a person feels each of those emotions. Okay, now, to create a nice behavioral KPI off emotions, we can either just look at specific things like the implicit emotion score or the explicit emotion score, like we did with the claims, or we can build a overall score. In this case, we find it's valuable to build an overall score so that we get a good picture of the market. So we break down in the implicit yes and no responses into a grid, and we weight the data. So if we want to take a look at the percentage of people who said fast and no, they get a -1 weighting, fast and yes, they get a +1 rating, et cetera, so forth. If I have an example like desire, if 60% said yes, I would multiply 60% times 1. 18% were a slow yes response. I'd multiply 18 times 0.5. Fairly straightforward formula. Overall emotion score of 75, and then that's based on a 100-point scale. Okay? So that takes into account all the different ways a person could experience this, and all the different ways the full marketplace experiences this. Now, if we just look back at that claim A and B, remember claim A had a very strong implicit response. Claim B had from a very strong explicit response. One of the things you notice here is that claim A scores very highly on hope and much lower on intrigue. Claim B scores low on hope, much higher on intrigue. This is the pattern you expect to see and you want to see if you are looking for a claim that is either nudging or disrupting. So our claim A, that's a nudged-based claim. It's a very implicit response. It's all about hope, right? I hope it does this for me, right? It's something that I have experience with. It's something that I know. Therefore, it creates hope. Claim B, on the other hand, is more disruptive. It's going to create intrigue for a high percentage of people. So we know that we want people to say, ooh, that's intriguing. Well, that's disruption right there, right? And you want that. The other thing you don't want is you don't want any fear, right? You don't want any hesitancy. Is there anything about this that makes you hesitant for the future, right? Are you worried? You don't want any of that. And then you should expect that you're going to get the similar levels of desire between the two products. And that's what we see here. So again, this example, you have a really nice case study for where you have two claims, both score very, very well, but one is really much more of a nudger and one's much more of a disruptor. And based on your brand needs, you can choose which one you want to go with. All right. The other thing that's an interesting way to show this information is that you can also take the relevance, right, which was the information we had before, and overlay that or scatter plot it against the emotional impact. And then you can visually also see this information. You want something that is both relevant and has high overall emotional impact. And you can pick which emotion you want to score across the bottom there as an example. This one was scored against your desire metrics. So that also is another way to help you set KPIs or hurdle rates. And using both relevance and emotional impact when you're doing claims-based research allows you to really pick a winning claim. So a really simple example, but very valuable in industry, because just picking a claim based on check all that apply won't give you this level of behavioral information. So you can use emotions and an implicit explicit test to get you to more behavioral information that you know is going to impact the market in a specific way. All right, case study number 2. Case study number 2 is more about sensory product testing. So the first one was more in the market space. This one's, I'm going to use an example of a central location test. And specifically in this study, this was a study on bars, filled bars. And one of the things we wanted to understand was how people reacted to those bars. The challenges in a central location test, we're doing a lot of prototype work. So, products are often unbranded in this case. It's really hard to say how I feel about something when I don't have all the specifics of a package and how it opens and why and how it smells when I open it and all those other things. So we're creating in a central location test a slightly artificial environment. And so I need an emotions test that cuts through the boredom, if you will, or the stayed state that or stayed context that you typically create in a central location test. Okay, so we're going to focus on the 100-point emotion score specifically for this particular behavioral KPI. All right, so how we do this, you saw in the claims test that we wanted to be able to do a projection on an image, right? We're going to do the same basic technique, but we're going to add one more step. So the first step is relating their experience with the product to some type of a contextual image. And that image allows you to do what we call projection of your emotions, right? So it's Psychology 101, behavior, some basic behavior science there. And then we explain why the image is a good metaphor, right? It's all forced metaphors. And then we add one more step, which is really, really useful in product testing, especially in like central location style testing, which is we ask them to describe the image. And what happens here is people can describe this image in any way they want. What happens is because they've been primed through this whole exercise within the context, with the image, they're only going to describe those things that are highly relevant to the product and the emotions that they're feeling with this product, okay, and the sensations. So we will get those subconscious cues coming to the surface when we ask this question. And then finally, we can do, how does this image make you feel? And we can zip through, like our emotions insights wheel, all of those experience emotions, or you can build your own list. If you have specific words that you think resonate better than more emotional words with consumers, that's all possibility within here, because while you want to be discreet in your emotions, you want to be able to interpret those words as well. They also need to be words that the consumers that you're studying know very well. Okay. So as we go through this, one of the things that is really great about this particular approach is that it's also really good at helping you break apart different products that may, on traditional KPIs like overall liking, give you more information to understand what's happening. So in this study of bars, we had 4 different bars. We had a couple of bars that didn't score so well on liking, and 2 bars that scored reasonably well and were tied with each other. And one of the things that's great about the emotions work is that you should see complete synergy between liking scores and emotion scores. So for instance, if I don't have it on the screen, but if I would have put up the scores for prototype 997, which is the one that got a 5.4, you would see that it gets a lot of negative emotions and it doesn't get very many high positive emotion scores. That's kind of a duh situation for you. Emotions is when you have things that are just really high and really low, not going to tell you a whole lot new. However, it's in these situations where you have things that are tied, you've got a bunch of really good products and you're trying to filter out between all of these really good items. This is where the emotions piece really comes into value in this type of situation and this type of innovation, because it helps you get to a place where you can make better decisions about behavioral impact on the market. So if I look at those top 2, 560, 275, notice I've only plotted the top 5 emotions here that we were working with. You can see that 560, which is in green, has much higher scores for calm and relaxed on the right-hand side, and prototype 275, which is in the orange, has much higher scores for excited and energetic. So if I am building this product and I know where I want to go with my concept, where I want to go with my brand, do I want a product that is designed for moments where people are feeling more calm and relaxed, or I want to help them feel more calm and relaxed? Or am I designing a product that is supposed to be around energy and excitement? And based on how I want to position this particular bar, it's going to help me pick which of those 2 that are both tied I should be moving forward. Likewise, I can dig deeper into this and I can say, okay, well, why? Why are we getting scores like that? Like, what's happening that one product, what is it? What characteristics about the product is driving those energetic and excited emotions versus the relaxed and calm? And this is where you get to go back to those open ends. And this is that extra piece that we said we added for doing central location work, or when you're doing a product review type assessment. If you look at the open ends, you're going to be able to curate from that what are the most common characteristics that people describe about the image. And what happens is that they will relate. Like on the image on the left, the bumpiness of the bricks is like the bumpiness of the fruit, was one of the quotes that was in that. And you get to see that, oh, this particular product does have more. It's about the bright colors. It's about the fruit on the inside. And that fruit filling is driving that energy and excitement. Whereas with the other product, with prototype 560 in green on the right-hand side here, it was much more about the wrapping. that was really focused. So less filling in this particular product, which is why it was less noticed, but also a slightly different wrapping. So you had more earthy, grain, chewy texture, long lasting, and that created a sense of calming and relaxing. So understanding how your product attributes and characteristics connect with the particular product and the emotions, and then therefore measures like your overall liking or purchase intent, allows you to get a good full behavioral picture and allows you to pick those winning products. All right, so those are the two case studies for today. Behavioral KPIs, they really do help you identify winners. They're very good at helping you go beyond traditional measures that are being used still today, like liking and purchase intent, where we get lots and lots of ties. Lots of good tasting products out there. Which one should we move forward with? Lots of products that people say they will buy. Which one should we move forward with? Behavioral KPIs get you to that next level of understanding of people. Make sure when you're doing your behavior KPI-based research that you're using a framework, right? If you don't sit down and think through the type of behaviors that you're trying to look at and how those connect to information, you may end up with a lot of spurrilous information that you're not sure really connects to behaviors or not. So make sure you're using some good frameworks and allow that information then to help you go beyond traditional measures to get a better understanding of what could happen in market. All right, and as those behavior measures become more valuable to you, you're going to see that you're going to be able to better predict what's going to happen in the marketplace when you put new innovations, new market messaging out there. All right, so now we have time for questions. If you have any specific questions, go ahead and type them in. Let's see, I've got a few already in here. Let me pull this out and see what we've got. Okay. You discussed relevance of a claim versus emotions. How do you address believability in relation to how relevant the claim is? That is a great question. Believability, we've done a couple different ways. So one way we've done believability is to look at believability as a scaled response in addition to the implicit response. And this is my preferred way of going. And although you could do believability as an implicit response as well. However, my personal take is believability is something that people tend to think about, and so is mostly explicit. So therefore, when something's mostly explicit, I want to get the full scaled response. So what I would look at is the relevance crossed by the believability. So is it both relevant and believable for that particular product? You can add uniqueness into that as well, which is another measure that I find very valuable in claims as well, because if it's very relevant, very believable, but not at all unique, then you're not going to disrupt the market. But if it's unique and now quite relevant, and especially if it's relevant and very explicit, right, then you're going to see that pop. Okay, let's see. In case study number 1, claim B was balanced, similar for implicit and explicit, i.e., it had 44 and 40% across them. Does that mean that the claim is too ambiguous? Should you get more focused on more explicit one, is I think what you're trying to get, versus having a balance. In practice, it's very rare to see a claim come up that isn't reasonably intuitive for a good portion of the population. I think that you're going to see that it's pretty uncommon to have a claim that is so disruptive that the vast majority of people go very, very slow. However, if you can find one of those, I haven't seen any yet, but if you find a claim that's that disruptive, and is that new, i.e. people haven't ever read that claim before or heard of that claim before, then absolutely, that would be a very good thing. But I think that a balance like we have here, implicit, explicit, 40, 44%, those are pretty good numbers. So just as a general assessment from my own experience, I haven't seen any that really just have basically no implicit yes relevance and lots of slow relevance. It doesn't happen very often. And I think it's just because when we come up with claims, usually we're going out to the market trying to find claims that people already know about, relate to, and so the process for coming up with claims is usually more aligned with what do people know, what do we think will engage people. If you have a very functional claim that it does something new that no product's ever done before, then I think you could possibly get there. Next question, how do you select the images? And then the second part is there's more parts to that question, but I'll start with the first one. How do we select the images? We actually built an image base using a design matrix. So we took a look at design. So you think about shapes, right? You can have squares, circles, triangles, cubes, cylinders, et cetera, so forth, indoor, outdoor, all those components. So we actually built an entire matrix around design thinking and graphic design here specifically. And we went then out to image banks and looked for images and then classified every image based on how it built itself or what characteristics it had. So essentially we came up with a descriptive profile or a design profile of every single image. And then we curated that list down so that we didn't have a massive skew of one type of image. And we made sure that we went out and found more images. So it was like, oh, we don't have any images that have this characteristic. So we built a set that has a full portfolio of all the different types of visual characteristics that people are used to seeing in the design space. Second, then, whenever we do an individual piece of research, we go through that bank of images, and our bank's 165 images at the moment. We curate out images that are too obvious. So if we're doing a food product, like the bars test, we take out all images that are just food, as an example. So the orange is out, the apple's out, a few images like that. Have we had consumers make their own collage? And is that as effective as selecting from a list of images? Making your own collage is a very rational process that people tend to go through. So building collages do work. There's certainly some really great, you can learn a lot of information when you build your own collage and or pick a series of images where you know a lot about the images being selected. From an emotion standpoint, though, I like the simplicity of just picking a single image rather than making a full collage. However, if you're earlier on in your process and you're trying to get more deep, rich information, then we use a lot of collaging in combination with other qualitative techniques. So like in an online board or in homework sessions, like for instance, maybe prior to the CLT, you might have them make a collage if you're about the moment that helps them understand the benefit and primes them better. Okay, let's see. Can slower responses be due to the complexity or ambiguity of the wording rather than the concept that it's being expressed on? Absolutely, yes. And this is one of the things that you have to be very conscientious of when you build implicit explicit tests. So there's several ways to analyze the data that come from implicit explicit tests. The way we like to do it is we calibrate every single person. So we give them an exercise where we understand what's a fast response and what's a slow response from every person. So they go through a series of calibration exercises. That way, if I'm just haven't had my coffee this morning, I can, and my response times are slower, that's okay. Or if I'm in a context where my responses are faster, et cetera. So further, I'm just the kind of person that has better dexterity with my fingers and I'm on my smartphone. All of that is controlled by doing a calibration exercise. Now, the key here is, to your question, is the calibration exercise has to mimic the length of the exercise that you're doing. So if I am doing, for instance, a claims test where where all my claims are really long sentences, then I'm going to make sure my calibration exercise has the same type of sentence structure. If all my claims are really short things, non-GMO, high fructose free, stuff like that, then I can use really short words in my calibration exercise. So you've got to match your calibration with the exercise that you're giving people. And then you have to be conscientious not to throw in a paragraph to read in an implicit exercise alongside something that's just 2 words long, because then you're just measuring how long it takes them to read something. All right. Let's see. Another question. It's good questions. Can you explain a bit more about how to develop frameworks? This is a great question. So we actually spend quite a bit of time focusing on the framework. So step 1 is you've got to make sure you study your science, right? So there are a lot of fabulous writings on emotions. There's a lot of really good frameworks on emotions. This framework that we've got that's specific on our emotions insights wheel, as an example, was built specifically around a framework that would help us understand how to look at emotions for building innovative products, right? If I am studying emotions on something else, maybe interpersonal relationships or something along those lines, that framework may have some relevance, but it might not be exactly right for that. So first of all, you've got to make sure you get out there and study the science, read the different points of view, read what, all of the works that go into that, and then start connecting the dots between things that are related. So in almost all pieces of research, you'll find that people are connecting specific dots. But, oh, I found this relationship. Oh, I found this relationship. So you may very well get, a really nice piece on moods versus attitudes, or on, how people make choices versus what's in their control, right? Or resource depletion, or the difference between ideals and goals in a perfect person's life. So building out an understanding of that base framework, and then start connecting the dots. What things relate to the next thing? That's the most important part about a framework, is asking, how do dots connect? So we find, certainly you saw, like in the behavior pyramid, there's a direction that's speed direction, right? Things at the base change slow, things at the top change very fast. And then if you looked at, we have a more detailed version where things on the right-hand side are much more connected than things on the left-hand side. So you're trying to create relationships. Okay. All right, so hopefully that helps answer that particular question. How do you figure out what the relevant behaviors are? That's a really interesting question. So in terms of what relevant behaviors are, one of the things that we like to do is look at the trends in industry. Like, what are the big social trends going on? What are the big product trends going on? Those trends, if you're in the innovation space, are the trends that matter, because they're indicators, right? We know that people are herding creatures. We know that people behavior doesn't rapidly change often, except with massive disruption. So lots of nudging is going on. So a lot of the relevant behaviors are related to trends, or can be subsumed within the trends that you see in the market. So one of the places that we look for relevant behaviors is there. The second is, what behaviors are we purposely creating? And if you're an innovation company, and or if you're a retailer, you can design your store layout and or your product line to encourage specific types of behaviors in your market messaging, right? When you put together advertisements, you can set the context which encourages specific types of behaviors. So the question is more along the lines, when you're doing innovation, which behavior is going to best promote your product and a healthy lifestyle from that individual than, say, a competitor's product? Clearly taking the time to avoid anything that would be, an unhealthy lifestyle. Just because my bars taste fabulous, it's probably unhealthy for them to be eaten at every single meal of every day. So I want to focus. That's why moments really matter, because then your product really fits a specific moment, and you can estimate, how often that moment happens, and then how much of that behavior can you take on with your particular product or product line. All right, a lot of good questions today. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. I don't see any new questions after that. So thank you all for joining us for behavioral KPIs and looking specifically at emotions today. And I hope and encourage all of you to take a chance on some new measures, right? Take a look at how emotions might help you break a lot of the ties in your research, and can help you get to that next level of understanding of your claims, your products, your marketing, and your innovation process. Have a wonderful day. If you are excited about these webinars, we have one more coming up next month. And this is going to be focusing on the future of packaging in the new trust economy. So we've got some new research that we fielded around packaging, and we're going to be sharing out what we've learned about the future of packaging in the new trust economy. I hope you'll all join us next month, July 11th, and that'll be at 2 Eastern, 11 Pacific. Thank you all, and have an absolutely wonderful day.